Welcome to this episode of the Down the Pub podcast. I am one of your hosts, Anthony Abbott. I've got a little bit of a cold this week, so you have to bear with me. And one of our regular co-hosts, Chris Searle, has been struck down, and he's going to be out of action for a few days with a worse version of what I've got. And man with perfect health, Gary Griffiths. Welcome back to the show, guys. What's been going on?
The cynic in me thinks that on the back of a defeat, that the both of you are feigning illness so you don't have to talk about it, and you're going to leave me to be the bad guy. That's what the cynic in me is saying. But no, I'm doing well, mate. I was just out at the gym. I go to the Y close to the grounds, and as I was walking home, I walked past the grounds, and the paint is now on the grass. There are a load of little workers. They look like Santa's elves hovering
Nice.
about, pottering about. They all look little. I don't know if we've got like child labor going on at the grounds, but from a distance, they look like tiny little people.
Do you remember Fraggle Rock? They had
I
like
do, yeah.
they had the doozers.
Yeah, yeah, it is, yeah. So we've got a bunch of doozers. Um, what they do, they live in the woodwork throughout the winter, and then they chew their way out when it comes to
The
pre-season. They chew their way out, and we
the
we throw
stands are
we
made of
throw
sugar.
them sunflower seeds for them to do the job. The stadium's looking lovely.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
yeah.
I heard a rumor you go to the Y because that's where Derek Martin works out. Is that true? So you can kind of get scoops and stuff.
Yeah, but I've never seen him in there. I've never
Oh.
seen him in there. So I feel like he's a fair weather gym user. And he took that picture that one time, so people thought he goes to the gym and has not been seen since.
He got one of those 3 day free membership things. He's just testing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Just to take that picture.
Probably got a little mirror selfie in there as well
Gains. Yeah,
with a Z.
I can't say anything, so I'm going to stay out of that conversation. Sorry to take us on a downturn and making us a little bit depressed, but we have to obviously talk. The reason we're here is to talk about the game. It's been a week, so I think like part of the reason, apart from Chris being sick, was to kind of wait a little while, is because like it's not as raw now, and I think I know you've had a couple of chances to relook, like go back and watch it again, and I think it's rather than us being emotional about it, we'd be able to like take a proper look and kind of delve into where we're having some of our issues in the team, and obviously, there's going to be teething problems because we've got new players and we're trying new things, and it's definitely, and I believe we've had some injuries too, so I think that hasn't helped either. So I kind of wanted just to get your thoughts on, we kind of talked after Pacific that we probably see a few wholesale changes in the lineup, but we didn't actually. It was only like one or two we saw different. Were you surprised by that? And the people that did come in, Jeremy and Aiden, did we change the system that we had for Pacific, or did we kind of keep things the same and they were just like for like?
With lineup changes and personnel changes, I'm always hesitant to come down too strongly on anything like that because, as you and I both know, we've maybe commented on stuff like that in the past, and then you get a message the next week from someone saying, "Oh, by the way, that player you thought who should have been playing, they were carrying an injury."
Yeah.
So I kind of assume now if there's anything in a lineup that doesn't quite make sense, it's probably because someone's got a knock or they can only play for 20 or 30 minutes. Like I think of Massimo Ferrin, there's absolutely no way he doesn't start both those games if he's 100% fit. So I assume he's carrying something because we've seen him for 20 minutes at the end of each game. And I thought he was probably one of our best players on the pitch just in that 20-minute cameo. So yeah, there's clearly something going on there. Um, in terms of changes, maybe I'd have expected one or two more, but we did make a couple. We kind of rotated a little bit to keep things fresh. Probo coming out was interesting. I probably again assume that that's maybe injury or fatigue related because he was so good against Pacific and he was so good when he came on against Vancouver that I guess there was something probably going on there. Starting 11, so we started the game 3-4-3 again, or 3-2-2-3, depending on how you want to look at it. So back three, same against Pacific, I believe, Nimick, Dunn, and Kale. And then the midfield kind of got a little bit interesting because we had Rampy and Jeremy as the holding midfielders, and then we had Lorenzo and Aidan Daniels playing as tens. And obviously, the headline from that is that Lorenzo was playing as a 10 rather than a 6. And we can get into shortly the pros and cons of that, but it was a pretty significant stylistic change when you take away the player who everything goes through. You take him out of that position and put him somewhere else. I have a few ideas of why we did that. One of which Vancouver play with two strikers. So by having two strikers, it's very easy for them to drop one of those strikers into midfield, sit him on Lorenzo so he can't dictate play and spray it about. So maybe by playing him higher up the pitch, we try to confuse them a little bit by that striker not really knowing if they're covering Jeremy or covering Rampy. So I imagine that was probably the reason. It might have also been a case of they saw something in Vancouver's team, which meant Lorenzo could be more effective higher up the pitch, perhaps. But yeah, again, we'll get into how that worked and didn't work later, I'm sure. And then up front, we had Valesky again with Zach and Telfer as a left wing back this time. So pretty much the same shape as the first week. It's the 3-4-3 we're trying, but some small personnel changes. What did you think of it?
Um, I could see why like Jeremy came in. I think that was to be expected. I didn't expect to see Lorenzo playing as a 10. I can see why you would think he could play there, and he probably can. I just think that it kind of interrupted our just the way that we play. It kind of reminded me. Remember, was it last year against York when he didn't play that game when he suspended? It kind of we just missed that in the middle, and that's no offense to Jeremy or to Rampy. Like they're two really good sixes. I just think that the defenders are always looking for Lorenzo as the release, and when he's not
Hmm.
there, it's kind of like where do we go? And I think that we really struggled to kind of get to have anything gone through the middle. But yeah, I definitely agree with you in that. Like I think there was some players carrying some knocks, so that's probably why we didn't get a massive change. Plus, we also had between the Thursday and Saturday like a big gap for players to recover anyway from like playing two games quite quickly together. But yeah, it was kind of odd, and like as you said, like there was probably something that like I don't think that Patrice is the kind of like coach that would just do something for no reason. There was obviously something that he saw in the Vancouver team or something that he thought that we were missing against Pacific that he brought Lorenzo that much forward. But I don't think it worked, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think that we definitely kind of missed him in the middle. But for you, like I know you're kind of talking about the pros and cons of it. What did you see from his performance? Because it's two games now, and he hasn't really been the Lorenzo that we all know and love. So, what were your thoughts?
I'm going to answer that question, but I think it kind of gives us a broader discussion point about the difficulty we had against Vancouver in building through the middle of the pitch. And I think if we're really going to nail down the reason we didn't perform too well is because we really struggled to progress the ball centrally on Thursday. So what Vancouver did is they kind of sat in a mid block, and we've talked about this before, but I do think we struggle against mid blocks. But Vancouver sat in a mid block. They let Jan have the ball. They didn't want to press Jan. They set up in an off the ball 4-4-2 shape. And then as soon as Jan passed to one of the centre backs, normally Kale, they pressed very, very aggressively. Diaz was really strong with Kale, like pressed him very, very quickly. And we really struggled to build because the Vancouver wingers, they clip right in and sit on our holding midfielders. So you've got the two strikers pressing our three centre backs. You've got their right winger and their left winger tucking right in and sitting on Jeremy and Rampy. So there's not many passing options when they do that. And you could kind of see the internal chess match that was happening with Jeremy and Rampy, where they were trying to figure out their way around that. So sometimes Rampy would drop right in to stand near the centre backs to get the ball short because he realised that someone was pressing him, they were pressing the angles. And then when he would do that, Jeremy would peel a little bit left to try and create another angle so they weren't standing on the same horizontal line, which is all well and good. But I looked up at my screen at one point when they were doing that, and I couldn't see Daniels and Lorenzo on my screen. I couldn't see Valescu on my screen. And when you can't see any of your attacking players on your screen and your holding midfielders are standing close to the defenders, that's a huge hole in the middle of the pitch. So whoever gets the ball, what are your passing options? Your passing options are maybe Zach's free on the right wing, but he's kind of already boxed in because Vancouver's fullbacks are pushed right up onto our wing backs. So they've gone man to man all over the pitch, basically. So the only passing option you have, and it isn't even really an option, is to go long. That's what kept happening. We kept breaking down because I felt like we were playing in units rather than as a cohesive collective whole. You had your little defensive units with Jeremy and Rampy close. Then you had up the pitch your tens and your striker, but there was no connectivity. There was no kind of fusion between those two parts. And we really struggled to build that way. And I think we struggle when teams go man to man on us, and we struggle when we face them mid block. And that's going to be a question we have to answer throughout the season. How do we get around that? Because by going long, I don't think we necessarily have the play in Valesky to go long. I think he's going to show good sides to himself, but I don't think he's quite there yet. And I find, again, another reason I think players are going long is because he gets quite agitated, I think, like just in terms of his body language and how he reacts when a pass isn't played. Sometimes they'll ask for it to feet and it'll going over the top, sometimes vice versa. And he projects agitation, I think. And I think that I don't want to say it scares players into feeling like they need to go long to him quickly, but it plays on your mind. We've all played five-a-side with someone who's very demanding, and this is a good quality to have, by the way. When you get to a higher level in the game, every player is like that because they're winners and they've learned to kind of express themselves like that on the pitch. So there's nothing wrong with him doing that, but we still do have a young group, and I do wonder if they're feeling like, oh, we've got to go long to him early because he's really demanding the ball and he's going to get annoyed if we don't. So I think that was part of us going long. Again, like I said, Rampy and Jeremy were playing a little bit close to defenders. That was an issue and made us go long. And also, like you said earlier, our technical reference point in Lorenzo is higher up the pitch, and therefore we naturally want to hit him as quickly as possible because he makes us feel safe and secure. So we looked up that end of the pitch for him as well. And I think all of that together in the first half just meant we didn't progress the ball as well as we normally do. Again, just to completely caveat that at the end, I think it's an experiment I would like to see again because we can't go through a season just relying on Lorenzo as our six every single week because teams will figure it out eventually. So we need to be able to use him in different areas and use his skill set further up the pitch as well. And the one thing, not that anyone needs my advice, but my one piece of advice would be on the days we do that, we use Probo as a holding midfielder because I think he's the only player, and this isn't me just trying to like finally be proved right that he could be a six, but I think because I think he will be better as a 10 throughout the season. But on the days Lorenzo plays as a 10, I think Probo is the only person who is analogous with Lorenzo in terms of his ability to progress the ball and his comfort on the ball so he can receive it and not really worry if he's got someone coming from behind him or from either side. So yeah.
So at half time we did make a significant change. We brought Wesley on and took Kale off. I'm not trying to pick out anybody individually, but Kale was fantastic against Pacific. This game, as you mentioned, like he was getting closed down very quickly, so he didn't have the same amount of time on the ball, and I didn't really feel like he had a release, which kind of skewed his passing. So, why do you think we switched him out? and brought in Wesley to kind of to change things up.
I think if you want a really clear idea of what a coach is thinking, you look at two parts of the game. You look at the first 5 minutes of the game because that's when the tactical instructions are clearest in the players' heads. They've just been told exactly what the coach wants them to do, so they come out. So for anyone that wants to analyze a game of football, watch the first 5 minutes of the first half because that tells you all you need to know. But I also think another important thing to look at is what does a coach do at halftime? Because if things are not going well, a coach will tell you exactly what he thinks is going wrong by the changes he makes at halftime. So number one, he moves Lorenzo back to being a six because he's obviously identified issues with our deep progression. And the other thing he does is brings on Wesley Timoteo for Kale. Wes, who is not as dominant as Kale, obviously, is in terms of his defensive work, but who is a very good ball progressor. So if they've recognized that that left side of our defense is a pressing trigger for Diaz, you put a player there who, I mean, he's played most of his career further up the pitch in little pockets where he has to have like a 360 head and a swivel. So you put a player there who's fine dealing with someone pressing him. So I think Patrice told us with those changes what he felt the issues were, and to a large degree did fix some of those problems, but not a slight on KO at all. I think he as his passing wasn't great. I think it was like in the mid 60s, but his passing was excellent the previous week. So, and it will probably be excellent on Saturday. And then there'll be another week where it's not so good. It's up and down when you're developing a new skill. So no problem there. But yeah, Timoteo brought a bit of technical security into that part of the pitch.
So do you think that like the second goal like really killed us off? Like do you think that, or did you feel we were coming back into the game at any stage, or the 2-0 was a fair reflection of how the game had kind of panned out?
Yeah, I think it was fair. I didn't feel like we were showing our true self and our true face until Massimo Ferrin and Provo came on. And once those two came on, it felt like we were watching us again. All of the things that we think of when we think about the best version of this team, those two, Provo's new, but he still exemplifies those qualities. So yeah, I think Vancouver were good value for the 2-0, to be honest. I like there's a frustration because both the goals came from individual errors. The first goal came from three
Yeah.
individual errors, I think. Which do you want to talk about those separately, yeah? Or do you want to?
Yeah, I kind of like, I feel like when we kind of do the podcast a little bit later, like, people have seen the goals to death, but I kind of got what Jeremy was trying to do because he was just trying to
Mm.
like knock it back. And I don't think uh Jan was prepared for that, like because it was such a weird time to do it. I think he was expecting him to head it out, and when the ball came, he kind of panicked himself, and then it just kind of led to a mess. And like for Dan's goal, I mean, Dan Nimrick will probably make two or three mistakes all season. I'm kind of glad he got one out of the way like sooner rather than later. And it was just he just took his eye off the ball. Like it was like kind of like just to use a cliche, a real schoolboy error. Because I mean, like how many times have you done it yourself where you think, you're kind of thinking of what you're going to do next rather than what's coming to you, and it just kind of just rolled on his foot. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. What was your look on the goals?
I thought the first one was. Probably Jeremy will get a lot of the blame, but you could trace it back to Zach. Probably should have cleared it. Well, not probably. He should have cleared it a lot better and he put it out for a corner when it wasn't on at all. Um, I feel like you could make an argument that Jan maybe could have come for the corner because it was on the edge of the 6 yard box. But I'm kind of reluctant to say that because I really don't understand goalkeepers or what makes a good goalkeeper, but it's certainly in his sort of zone. So maybe he could have come and got it. Jeremy, you could see as it was dropping, you could kind of see what was going on in his head because we watch a lot of football, Premier League games. that situation will happen and the defender will really calmly head it back to the keeper, crowd will applaud, and the commentators will go, "Oh, the calmness under pressure there." And I can like literally see those narratives and that commentary going on in his head while he's doing that. Going, oh, Adam Jenkins is going to say, "Oh, calmness under pressure," it's not a bad header back, to be honest. But what happens at the last second? I think it's Julian Dunn just comes across Jan, and I think he just, or maybe it's Julian, maybe it's someone else, but they just block him for a split second, and I think he sees the ball late. Normally he would just catch that because it was a fairly good height, but instead he falls on it instead and palms it out, and just a collection of errors. With the Dan one as well, yeah, he'll probably make one or two a season, and that's it. I think all he does is, as the ball's passed to him, he tries to like kind of curve his instep outwards to, because he's got someone pressing him from his left side. So he curves his instep outwards to take the ball to the right, but it just doesn't go right and it goes under his foot. As the Vancouver player takes their first touch, Julian Dunn's kind of looking elsewhere because he doesn't expect that mistake to happen. So he's a step behind reacting, and it just goes from there. And yeah, both goals just summed up the night,
uh,
didn't
yeah,
they?
I must say though that Moses Dyer was like
Good player.
he's so like he's just one of those busy bees that's just
Mm.
always, and him and Vitar like together are a big nuisance for defenses, and I think they gave us a really hard time. But the run he did to get past like four defenders and hit the post was quite exceptional. So I think
A good team, aren't they, Vancouver?
yeah, we kind of talked about it like in the season preview that they bought well or brought in good players, and I think having a little bit more like kind of like what we've done a little bit, brought in a bit more experience. They brought in like Ben Fisk, and they brought. I feel like teams are now starting to try and bring in players to have CPL experience because obviously it's different than other leagues. It's building up its own style, its own kind of brand of football. And like, you've seen it like with Ottawa obviously too, where they're just trying to bring in seasoned pros who've played in the league, and Moses Dyer and players like that, and bringing Diaz back in was a really good sign too. So I think they're going to be there. Like I think they're definitely going to be there or thereabouts. I kind of put them to be like sixth, I think, but I think they're like on the back of the three games to seeing them now. I think they did really well against Calgary last week, actually. So,
Mm. They,
yeah,
they've got a lot of running power. I like they're a powerful team, aren't they? And they're
yeah,
fast and they're like they're not pressy in that they press you all the way, but they pick their moments. And when they do, they're super aggressive with it. They're really smart the way they use their wingers as well, because their wingers tuck right in and become tens, and their fullbacks give the width, and they just centrally they're so strong in the middle of the pitch. You can't play through the middle of them, and they counter attack really well. A lot of individual quality. I think with them, they'll probably fade later in the season because they do. I don't know how many kilometers they run, but I feel like their front two and the wingers probably, and probably the fullbacks as well, cover 11 plus kilometers a game, the amount they run. So you're probably going to burn out eventually, but they might do the Pacific thing of building up enough of a points tally that they can become a bit shit in August and get away with it.
yeah. Like last night, I saw pictures like of Caden Chung hobbling away on crutches. So it's
Mm.
stuff like that, and he's a really good player, and obviously we hope he gets back playing. It's not too serious, but it's little things like that. When you have to kind of replace a Caden Chung with somebody who's probably like not as experienced, it's probably going to force him a little bit. But yeah, and I think
Wonder what that Cameron, the young lad,
he's
like
really good too. Yeah.
yeah, he's I don't know where he's been, but he could replace Chung if
Yeah, and I think they've been clever, like in bringing back so many local players. Like it's kind of makes the fans buy into it a little more that they kind of know these guys from the area and stuff like that. So, I did want to kind of just ask you, like we've kind of we haven't scored a goal now in two games. Kind of been creating chances, but not too many clear-cut chances. And I kind of just wanted to get your thoughts on why, because I know you're a stats guy, and just looking at the stats, like we had some like really good stats in terms of like possession, passes in the opposition third, passing opposition had like the accuracy. But when it comes down to like total big chances, Vancouver had five and we had zero. From the game, I know you watch it back and stuff like that. What are we missing? What's going on?
It's it's the connectivity, I think, what I was mentioned earlier. Like I felt like we were missing parts of the pitch and we were finding it really difficult to get it into those attacking positions. It was like trying to climb a ladder, but there's a couple of rungs missing, it felt like sometimes. Um, Another part of it is teammates getting used to each other. As I said with Valesky, I think everyone is still trying to figure him out, figure out when he wants to run in off the shoulder, when he wants to come short to the feet. It's not really sticking to him as well. So once we get up there, the moves are tending to break apart quite easily. Um, so yeah, it's connectivity and it's players getting used to a new system because if you think about how we were playing last season, and we played this way a lot in the second half against Vancouver as well, um, it was a lot easier to see where those five attacking players would be standing. And another part of that is I felt like we had a bit more, don't really know how to describe this, like structural depth. Does that make sense? Like I looked at us a few times against Vancouver, and when we've got our line of five attackers, so we've got the two wing backs, the two tens, and the striker, too often they were quite flat and they were standing in a straight line. And what you want when you have five players in those attacking positions, and we had this last season, was one of them drops in and one of them runs beyond and one of them tucks in and one of them goes wide. So you're offering different angles. And I just felt like we were a little bit flat up there against Vancouver. So but this is all stuff that gets worked out on the training ground. This isn't a terminal problem. It's not a reason to panic in any way. It's just one of those things that needs working out because against Pacific we didn't score, but we had an XG of 1.3 or 1.4 or something. I can't remember what. And I know there's going to be a portion of people that hear that and are rolling their eyes at the mention of XG, but I do find XG useful as a tool to tell you like what XG does is, when you watch a game and you instinctively go, oh, we look pretty good, like probably should have scored a couple of goals. XG is just a way of quantifying that feeling you walk away with. And against Pacific, I think we all definitely had that. So a one-off game against Vancouver, yeah, we didn't create a lot and were poor, but I I'm not too stressed. Maybe that's because we've had a few days to reflect, but yeah, it's not. I don't see this being the story of the season. It was just a poor performance. And think back to the games we played there last season as well. We didn't play well in
Yeah.
either of those games in Vancouver. They've got something over us. The way they're set up, that kind of meaty, centralized 4-4-2 doesn't suit us. It's a bit of a kryptonite for us. So not too much to read into it, but yeah, the goals will come. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
even like the first game we played them at home, like during our when we didn't win for the first whatever number of
Yeah.
games, I thought they played really well against us. Like we played really well for the first 20-25 minutes, and then they kind of just changed things around and frustrated us. So yeah, there's something with the way that they play and the way that their coach sets them up that kind of just annoys the Jesus out of us. So before we move on to looking forward to Saturday and get your opposition corner and things like that. There was a thing that after the game, it was brought up on one soccer thing was that Patrice was talking about dynamic and kind of like the noise around him and how he needs to be consistent and he has to if he wants to be one of the best players in the league. That like consistency is the key. The guys that were on One Soccer kind of mentioned that like obviously Jordan is an ex-player and KJ was saying like like you kind of like to hear these things every now and again to kind of just let players kind of know where they are and things like that. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on do you think it was a fair point first of all, and second of all, like how do you buy into that kind of stuff? Like psychologically, do you think that actually works?
No idea if it was a fair point because I have no insight into what's going on with Dan off the pitch. Um, I imagine there was interest in the off season. I imagine there's still interest. I imagine he's aware of that interest. But day to day, I have no idea if it's affecting his performances. I wouldn't think so. I just like from the brief interactions I've had with him, he doesn't seem the sort.
Yeah,
But there's a difference between like what you consciously project and what you subconsciously project. So maybe there has been something Patrice has noticed, who knows. In terms of Patrice commenting on that, I feel like in situations like this, you've got to trust the person that works with these players day in and day out. He knows what every single member of his playing staff needs to make them tick. So he obviously, like, he didn't say that by accident. He didn't just say that off the cuff. He would have thought about the fact that he was going to say that. So that obviously means, number one, he feels like him and Dan's relationship is robust enough to withstand a comment like that, because otherwise you don't say it. And number two, he thinks Dan mentally is strong enough and has thick enough skin to take a comment like that as well. Because there's no way you jeopardize the harmony and good feeling within your squad just for the sake of a one soccer soundbite. So that would have been thought out, and he would have considered the person and how the person would react. So I my opinion is I trust that really. So I've not got any great problem with it unless Dan has, which I don't imagine he would have done. Like the only issue I say I don't have any. The only issue I do have with it is I don't think Dan had a bad game. I think he made a bad mistake, but I don't think he had a bad game. If you look at his numbers, he was fine. If you look at his defensive work, sometimes he was our savior when Vancouver were counter-attacking. So I thought it was an okay performance, but I think Patrice had a point he wanted to make, and he made it. So yeah, he'll live and
yeah,
die by that.
yeah, exactly. I think it's a big factor what you said there. Like it's, I know that when one soccer they were kind of saying like, oh, I've got no problem with a manager coming out and saying that, but like you have to know what the person's like, and there's always that cliche in football, like if you're an arm around the shoulder kind of guy, or
Harry Redknapp type.
yeah, or you want the kind of feedback to kind of motivate you kind of stuff. So he knows Dan better than anybody. So like for him coming out and saying that, I think it was purely just to kind of motivate Dan and just kind of say like, hey, like going forward, like just consistency is. And I agree with you. I don't think he had a bad game at all. It's just that one mistake really cost us, which is when you're a defender, that's going to happen. Like it sucks that that's the way it is. But
I think
um,
Dan's going to score on Saturday.
yeah,
Honestly,
yeah, yeah.
I've got a weird feeling that he's going to score on
Well,
Saturday.
well, well, he had pretty much like he's had most of our best chances in the two games that we
Mm,
played. So
true.
I don't I think with the way that he's playing on the right hand side, he's getting forward a lot more. So but yeah, like just going back to I just thought it was kind of worth mentioning because I don't think we've really seen Patrice do that, and I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on why a manager would do that in case anybody was wondering. Just before we do get into opposition corner. I just wanted you to, because we talk an awful lot on the show about low blocks, mid blocks, all that kind of stuff. For people like we get all types of people to listen to the show. Could you explain just a little bit about what each one is to kind of give them an idea of what you're actually talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So if you think about when people talk about low blocks, imagine your team is 1-0 up against Man City with 5 minutes to go, and your defensive line is basically standing in your 18-yard box. That's a low block. It's when a shitty team plays a really good team and they just put a lot of players behind the ball. Your defense is as low as it can possibly go, basically. So that would be a low block. The opposite end to that would be a high press. So if you think about a very aggressive Liverpool team from 2 or 3 years ago, where soon as the ball's in play, it gets rolled to the keeper. They are rabid and they are all over him. They're pinning their centre backs, they're pinning their fullbacks, getting really in their faces. High line, so the defence pushes right up to the halfway line. Loads of space behind them. Kind of like Tottenham. Tottenham play like that now, don't they? So
Yeah,
they're the two extremes: your low block and your high line, high press. Mid block is somewhere in the middle. It's where your defensive line would kind of be halfway between the 18-yard box and the the halfway line, but kind of moving up and down towards halfway line, back to the 18-yard box. You're not an aggressive pressing team. You kind of sit there in your position and just wait for a team to try and play through you. So if you were looking at the entirety of the pitch, most of the team would be in that kind of middle section of the pitch. You wouldn't really have any defenders in the 18-yard box. You wouldn't be pressing high. You'd be in that kind of middle area. Um, it's a good way of playing against teams that like to pass out from the back. Because so if you're an opposition coach scouting Halifax, what do we like to do? We like to split our centre backs to either corner of the 18-yard box. We like to drop a 6 in near them, and the goalkeeper stands there with his foot on the ball and has those 3 passing options. So and we're good at that as well. So if you're an opposition manager, you think, okay, if we sit in a low block, Halifax are going to have 85% of the ball, and eventually are probably going to break us down. If we kind of go with a high line and a high press, Halifax is gonna rat-a-tat around us. They're gonna play through our press, and one good pass to get out of the press, they've got the whole of the pitch to run into, and our defenders shitting themselves, scampering backwards, trying to cover the space. Every now and then they might win the ball back doing that, but usually they won't because we're good at that. So if you're the opposition coach, you say, okay, if we sit in a mid block, we let that first pass from their build come. So we let Jan pass it into one of the centre backs. No problem. We'll let that happen. And then when that happens, that's when we squeeze the pitch and we make sure these spaces between the lines that we like to pass into, they don't exist. The centre backs will kind of push up. The centre midfielders will squeeze us in, and we take away the space. So that's why we end up going long, because there's no space to pass to in the middle of the pitch. The only space is behind their centre backs. But if you're decent centre backs, you deal with long balls all day long. Take a couple of steps back, head it free. Keeper plays high, so the keeper can kind of sweep any long balls. So that's what teams are doing against us at the moment. They're setting up in the mid block and daring us to try and play through that, because they know if we do, they're going to pick our pocket. As soon as we try and play it into the tens, they're ready to smash us and win it back.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. I really appreciate it. I hope that helps in case anybody was wondering what Gary and Chris will be talking about when they're talking about the different types of blocks and presses and stuff.
I always wonder, sorry, just on that, mate. I always wonder, like, when we're talking about this stuff, whether to do that. But I'm always caught between, like, I don't want to sound like I'm patronizing anyone, but also,
I don't
I don't
think
know.
so.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that, kind of forget that there's a lot of people who are still new to the game, and I
Yeah.
think it gives them a good scope of what it is you're talking about. So thanks for that.
But like, just for those people, like, the way we often talk about football is the most bollocksy, pretentious way possible. Like, most people think this is ridiculously lame. Like, this sort of football chat. Like, there's this guy I follow on Twitter. He's like this Mancunian. He's a City fan. He always makes me laugh because he's a proper like Northerner. And anytime I always see him like reply to any tweet that's like talking about XG, talking about like defensive blocks, talking about like box midfields, and his comment to every single one of those is, "Yeah, I was just saying this to the lads down the pub." Like every single time.
That man's
Because
like
it's just like so like how fucking ridiculous it is. And no one actually talks about these things, but we're doing a podcast, so I thought we might as well.
that's fucking amazing. So
So wanky.
we were gonna I did kind of want to come up with a theme song for Opposition Corner. So if there's any musical minded listeners who want to come for the theme song for Gary for his Opposition Corner, we would really appreciate it.
Can we just say the suggestions? So are there copyright issues with my suggestions, or you just don't like them?
No, I think there's copyright issues. Like the Only Fools and Horse, I
Okay.
think was an amazing one.
Yeah.
I came up with the Laurel and Hardy theme song, which I'm sure there's probably a copyright thing as
What
well.
what's the what's the theme song for this show now? I recognize it.
Oh, it's I can't say because we'll get taken off the air. So
Okay. Is it a
uh,
TV theme
yeah,
from a while ago?
yeah,
'Cause it's in my head somewhere.
it's Saint and Greavesy from the
Oh, okay, yeah.
90s. That was my favorite football show when I was growing up because he used to be on Saturday morning before the games would kick off.
Yeah.
And it
When
was
Brian Clough was on it sometimes as well.
yeah,
And
it was Jimmy Greaves and Ian St. John, and
mm,
Jimmy Greaves was an amazing person.
yeah.
Um, So yeah, so off-season corner guy, let us know what we can expect from Ottawa and what do you think that we will bring to try and counteract the way that they play.
They're good. I've been unpleasantly surprised by them because they're a bit better than I was expecting them to be honest. I thought there would be a lot of holes in that team because I assumed Aparicio and Bassett would play very high and it would be Zapata on his own on an island trying to put out a lot of fires. But they've been quite smart with it. So I watched them against Cavalry. Like a lot of teams off the ball, they're 4-4-2. So they had Nate Ingham in goal, Twadek right back, Didic and Singh centre backs, Dibrien left back, and then they had Bassett right wing, Zapata and Aparicio central midfield, Tabla on the left, and then Sissoko, interestingly, and Salter as the two off the ball strikers. So that's just their off the ball shape. Then when they win the ball back, same back four and goalkeeper. Zapata and Aparicio as like a double pivot. Bassett to the right. Sissoko as the 10. Tabla left wing, and then Salter on his own up front. Bassett and Sissoko, very interesting the way they operate because so I mean Sissoko as a 10 is quite strange, but it works for them. And he's kind of the water carrier for Bassett. He allows Bassett to just float all over like the final third, pick up little pockets he wants to pick up, and end up on the left, end up as a right winger, end up as a central player. And Sissoko just does all his running. And wherever whatever space that he's left, Sissoko kind of plugs that gap to make sure teams can't counter very well. Um, Tabla is Tabla, very fast, very sprinty. Haven't seen the best of him yet because I don't think they've been as defensive as they used to be. So he hasn't had the chance to kind of do those rapid counter attacks, but still dangerous player. Um, Aparicio is doing a very selfless job for Ottawa at the moment, and I think that surprised me because a player who desperately wanted an MLS move is probably trying to prove that he's this technically gifted attacking player, but what he's doing is actually a lot of defensive work. He's incredibly aggressive, incredibly sprinty and pressy to and I think it's detrimental sometimes actually, which I'll get into in a minute. But they're a good team. Their superpower, I think, is how they transition from being off the ball to on the ball really, really quickly and really smartly. So by having players who do float around the pitch like Bassett and Sissoko and Aparicio, they know as soon as they lose the ball, they snap right back into that 4-4-2 shape. And it's really hard to play through that because essentially in their DNA, they're still a defensive team. So they know how to do that when they need to. So difficult team to play through. If I was there aren't that many ways to get the better of them, to be honest. I know people don't want to hear that. One thing is Dibrien, he's a good left back. I do think he's quite overrated though. I don't think he's got much of a right foot. So I would make him the pressing trigger. I would kind of I would angle our press to encourage him to always be the outball. So in an ideal world, when Ottawa are trying to build, I would try and make sure the ball ended up with Dibrien. And when it ends up with Dibrien, I would press his left foot. So just target his left foot. So he's forced to kind of come back inside onto his right foot. And I don't think he's good enough on his right foot to play passes through the lines and to build. That's one little way. Yeah. So try and funnel it through to him and then press him onto his right foot. Another thing would be to target Zapata. I know I've spoken ill of him before. He's fantastic on the ball, but he's off the ball, mate. He can be got out massively. Like if you have players playing on his shoulder, he's got no recovery pace. Honestly, he can't turn around without a Zimmer frame. He'll throw his hip out if he tries to turn around and run backwards. So if you put players on his shoulder and get them in running into the spaces behind him, he can be got out as well. But again, brilliant on the ball, fantastic builder. And the last thing, Aparicio, I said like doing a really selfless role, but he has moments in the game where he literally turns into a heat-seeking missile. He'll just like you'll just see him turn, like something will flick in his head, and he'll be like a little puppy who needs to go and get the ball. And he'll leave his hole, he'll run all over the pitch trying to press whoever's got it. Crowd will love it. Fantastic. He's got a cape on his back. He thinks he's a superhero. But what he does when he does that, sometimes he'll win the ball, but there'll be other times where he leaves a massive hole where he should be standing. So I think it's up to us to recognize when he's doing that. If we can play around him, that's where the space is because he's left his hole. Um, so what we do in those moments of transition is so important against them, and how do we take advantage of their floaty tens? How do we take advantage of a six who just goes looking for the ball sometimes and another six who doesn't really have any running power? How do we take advantage of those moments and those players? But it's going to be difficult because they've got so much talent and they're very well organized and they can kill you in a second. So we can't make any mistakes and we have to kind of bank on them making mistakes.
Yeah, I think with Aparicio as well is he's sometimes he sees a red mist as well.
Mm.
So I think that like getting in his head a little bit might help, like if you're get him on a yellow early kind of thing. And I know it's kind of old fashioned, but he does have that kind of if things aren't going his way or whatever that, he does have a bit of a temper. So it's going to be
That
interesting.
you
Sorry, go ahead.
saying that makes me think actually we're quite a nice team now, aren't we?
Yeah,
Like because when you were saying that, I was like before you'd want Morelli in his ear. You
yeah.
would like you'd want Morelli in Apricio's ear going, you were too shit for MLS, Manny. Like you had all these trials. I know this is horrible, mate, but this is what happens. Like you
Yeah.
had all these trials and you weren't good enough. Like, how does that make you feel? Do you feel like you let your family down?
So, so, so
Like I know this is horrible. This is horrible. But I've told you before, my mate who played non-league in the UK, he played conference and got up to League Two. And this is like it's rife with this. Like every players are constantly talking to each other about like saying this sort of thing to each other. And I see Morelli as someone who would do that. So, but I feel like we've got quite a nice group of players now who wouldn't be assholes like that, which
I
is good. But
I feel like I just start crying and the commentator's like, is Anthony ever cry on the pitch right now? But well, so we might actually see Gary start on Saturday just to be a shitbox to Manny Aparicio and make him think he'll end up going to therapy at half time.
Oh, I would never be able to do that. But there are players who can, so more power to them.
Oh God, I feel like Callum Watson would be that kind of guy too.
He was, yeah. What
Just banter, right?
his dad told me a funny thing about Callum and Charlie Trafford when Cavalry were playing us last season, literally spent the entire 90 minutes saying things like that to each other. Like Callum was like telling him how old he was and he was going to throw his back out in a minute. And Charlie was coming back at him about his hair and stuff. And like apparently it was just full on for 90 minutes. They just non-stop giving each other shit.
Oh man.
Yeah, he would have been the one to do it.
Oh man, I love that. I love that. So just before before I let you go, I know we normally do like a kind of man of the match thing, but yeah, it's kind of
Eh,
tough one to pick out. So I'll give it to Massimo Ferran. I thought he was good when he came on.
Massimo Ferrin and Provo because
Yeah,
they changed our lives when they came on. And Massimo did the one thing we were missing, which is dribble it, like
yeah,
turn and carry the ball instead of trying to play a short pass or a long pass. So yeah, Mass was brilliant. I
uh,
hope he's fit.
yeah, me too. So want to give a congrats to Yorgos Gavas on his developmental contract. He's been kind of in and around the Wanderers for like the last season and a bit. So congrats to him. Great news for York, their biggest crowd since 2019,
Mm.
which was great to see.
Good on
Uh,
them, man. I feel like they've got so many supporters and supporters groups who have been in the trenches, constantly getting taken the piss out of. So I really want them to do well because they've got a core group of hardcore supporters who deserve it so much.
yeah, it's a pity that they lost 3-0.
Yeah,
So
very sad.
well, just before I let you go, Gary, so what's your plan for the home opener? What's your day looking like?
I don't know actually. Yeah, not sure. I haven't started those negotiations with friends yet. I feel like I always start the season with the best of intentions, like go to Free House on Agricola first, and
Hipster.
then take a walk to the stadium and watch the game. And it normally lasts for a few weeks, and then it just becomes, oh, I'll just meet you there 10 minutes before kickoff. But I think I'm going to get there nice and early and watch the warm-ups because I like watching a nice warm-up.
Yeah, I enjoy dodging footballs being aimed at my head by the players when
Oh
stand
yeah,
behind
you're
the
in the
patio.
firing line. What's
Yeah.
your plan?
To be honest with you, normally like I kind of meet one or two of the lads like beforehand, but I'll probably go straight to the ground and take it from there because yeah, because Saturdays I normally have the boys, so
Mm,
I'm being allowed uh to go, so I don't want to take my push my luck and like leave at like 11 o'clock in the morning. So
yeah, you don't want to do it. You want this to go well enough where you're allowed for future weeks to go again.
exactly. So yeah,
So it's like
I don't take the piss. So
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, like
I feel like we've done a really bad job of advertising the various meetups that are going on before the game. If you're not boring like Anthony and I,
yeah,
you can go to the Pint to meet up with the privateers, or you can go to Kai Brady to meet up with the Block 102
block
gang.
one, block 108,
Block 108
and
gang,
the
yeah.
I think the 110 gang
Mm,
might mingle with 108 now. I think,
yeah.
but the
And
in fairness, I will say, last season I did go to Kai Brady's quite a bit before the games. That's normally our little meeting spot because it's close to the ground,
mm,
and they usually always have good deals on points of like I think it was like 5 or 6 bucks for a tall ship or something like that before the
decent,
game.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
if those two crews are in the pubs, you can
yeah.
also me and my 104 firm will be will be eating lobster and dining out on caviar. Um, Champagne starter brought up to your seat.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be sipping on some Pimm's cups beforehand and having some cucumber sandwiches. Just kind of maybe Gary roll these days. Like
Yeah, that's why we've got such sunny complexions,
yeah,
isn't it?
it's well, it's what happens when you're a celebrity. You kind of want to go after the finer things in life. So yeah, enjoy the game, man. I hope everybody does enjoy the game and gets the result that we so desperately need. So yeah, man, it's been fun. Thanks for all your insights, and I'll hopefully see you Saturday.
Cheers, mate. Bye bye.
Thanks, buddy.
Folks, please. Right foot, please. Time to drink up, folks. Get out. Out to box.